Okay, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the next session here. And our presenter will be Miss Alia Wedderburn. She's the head of School of Aesthetics and Cosmetology at the Excelsior Community College. That's in Jamaica. And she's a current content expert and business consultant within the beauty and wellness industry. And she holds a Master of Arts in Leadership in TVET and Workforce Development, and she's currently pursuing her PhD in Gender and Development at the UWI. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome, Miss Wedderburn.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let's hope that good things will be coming to us who have waited for such a long time. Curls and Contours, Exploring the Aesthetic Freedom of the Afro-Jamaican Woman in Cosmetology. This is a presentation of my research proposal. I have done this presentation in a gendered space before, because as he said, I'm currently pursuing an MPhil PhD in Gender and Development, and I'm taking this opportunity to present in the space with TVET practitioners to get your feedback on the study and to see in what ways I can improve it before I proceed. Am I pressing something? Oh, it's down. It's okay, thank you. Following the typical format of a research project, there are some areas that I will not really spend a lot of time on, but this is the expected format. Looking at gender and development, for us to get a clearer understanding of gender and development, even in this TVET space, the Philippine Commission on Women, they define gender and development as a development perspective and process that is participatory, empowering, sustainable. Those are some key words that I'm pulling forth. So gender in the typical sense, once we hear that term in Jamaica, we're thinking of LGBTQIA. It goes, the list goes on. And we think of feminists and the angry women who don't like men. But just for you to understand that gender is much wider. It's a holistic approach to development which considers the rights and the needs of men and women. For the context of this research, my approach is from that of Africana womanism, which is a form of feminism, meaning that I am intending to give more focus and attention to the oppressions that we face because of racial discrimination. Women, Moser in 1993 expressed that women experience oppression differently according to their race, class, colonial history, and culture. So, for example, in Europe, in Asia, even in some aspects of Africa, when TVET speaks of gendered issues, they speak of persons who we have women not being able to access training or they're not able to get certain jobs. For us in the Caribbean, it would be way different. And we'll be looking more so at the oppression that women face and that we face in general because of our race and our colonial history. We're intending to recognize the differential impacts of development, policies and practices on women and men, and we are hoping to view women as agents of change, agents of development, and not just recipients. So we are active participants in the process. We are hoping to be able to address inequality with gendered factors such as race and education, but not just through mere policies, but instituting changes with systems, and hence why we are now looking at the TVET system to see how TVET can be used to affect gender. And most importantly, we're looking at the empowerment of women. For TVET, and this is just a reminder because we've been hearing about TVET and the purpose of TVET for all these years. And yes, we are now making emphasis that we use TVET as a tool for social equity, inclusion, and sustainable development. And also we will be looking at using TVET for poverty alleviation. For those of you who are not sure or are not aware of what cosmetology is, I've included a definition so that you have a general scope of what we'll be looking at today. It is defined as the art and science of beautifying and improving the skin, nails, and hair, and includes the study of cosmetics and their application. There's no way for me to talk about cosmetology without mentioning philosophy. And I'm sure those may be two areas that you would not normally bring together, but there are five main branches of philosophy, of which aesthetics is one. It's the study of art and beauty, the value of art and beauty, and the influence that it has on us as human beings. Here we have quotes from two philosophers. Well, one of them has disappeared. From Schiller in 1902. He did a lot of his work in the 18th century, but it is still influencing the issues and the challenges we have now. He said it is through beauty that we arrive at freedom. Marcus Garvey also said to us, do not remove the kinks from your hair, remove them from your brain. For this study, I'll be focusing on, because cosmetology is pretty wide, I'm focusing on hairstyling or hair in itself and makeup artistry. For the context of this research, we're looking specifically at the cosmetology TVET curriculum, and this forms pretty much the foundation for aesthetics, the way we view beauty. We look at the curriculum, which is what we use to train upcoming cosmetologists, and we're looking at the influence these cosmetologists have on women in our society. The fact that we control the way women appear, we are the ones doing your hair, doing the makeup, what level of influence we have on their self-esteem and their perception of beauty. Further to that, we're looking at the role that beauty now plays in society and how it influences the sense of empowerment and inclusion. How does it allow a woman to feel good about herself and empowered to do her work, to take care of her family? And in what way or will the image of the woman create either a barrier for her to experience development, or will it create a pathway? Because I'm sure you've heard the situations where a woman, based on the color of her skin or the style of her hair, is able to get a job or not, whether she's selected for marriage or not. So these are some things that we will have to look into. So the problem we have really and truly is an exclusive curriculum. The NCTVET curriculum is used pretty much CVQ, NVQ, the content is the same. It is used across the Caribbean. However, maybe unfortunately, the units are aligned with Caucasoid features and Eurocentric standards. Pretty much all the areas you look at is really how to get the Black woman to transform herself as much as possible. That's why we teach chemical hair straightening and that type of thing. The theoretical concepts and practical competencies, they malign Negroid features. So in terms of, you're setting standards for your students, in terms of what you want them to achieve, it is to get the client to look as far removed from her natural features as possible. And that is when they'd be found competent. When you're able to get the hair bone straight, when you're able to fix the shape of the face and fix the features and get them to look Eurocentric. And in essence, we are standardizing racial order. Racial order is when we categorize people based on their appearance, their skin color, their hair texture. So once we have certified somebody from cosmetology level 1 all the way up to level 4, when we have these occupational associate degrees, what we're doing is really sending persons out to get persons with Afrocentric features in order to get them to look like the persons they ought to look like, to the standard that has been set. We also have social and economic issues and challenges coming from using this curriculum, from this practice of cosmetology, promoting aesthetic hegemony. When we have power systems that have been created where the Afro-Jamaican, and if we have persons now who are not from Jamaica, the Afro-Caribbean woman, she feels marginalized in the midst of this, in the midst of these services. And it is really a reflection of mental enslavement, because that's where it's really coming from. There are also health concerns. These are not publicized readily. If you search for them, you will find them, but in obstetrics and gynecology, they've been doing a lot of study and research on the effect of hair relaxers and hair color, bleaching creams on our reproductive system. So women having issues with birth defects and having cancers and issues in their womb, a lot of it is connected to the products that we are using. And interestingly, Jamaica had an import bill for weaves, wigs, and eyelashes in 2016 and 17 for over $1 billion. So, yes, we have issues with poverty and we don't have any money, but is it more so how we are spending the money and the investments that we are making and how this could be otherwise treated? Significance of the study. If we are to understand TVET as a system that will empower us, is it just empowerment through employment or is it empowerment through our mindset? So we have to authenticate the purpose of TVET by ensuring standards of inclusion, diversity, and sustainable development in cosmetology's theory and practice. So what we are required to know and what we're required to do. And all of this should be towards the empowerment of the Afro-Caribbean woman. We aim to equip cosmetologists as psychosocial agents because we know the influence. We know you bear your hearts out to them when you go to the salon. If they tell you to stay or if they tell you to leave him, you will listen because we are that influential. So how about us empowering cosmetologists to support the holistic development and empowerment of Afro-Jamaican women? The aim is also to regulate safer practices among practitioners and manufacturers of cosmetics to safeguard women's health. Because the thing is, usually once there is a product that is toxic, there is an alternative. But if they are not forced to give us safer alternatives, then it's usually cheaper to give us toxic products. So it will pretty much remain the same. The objectives of this research: to assess the influence of historical factors on the scope of the cosmetology TVET curriculum, to explore the extent to which beautification and enhancement of features influences the lived experiences of Afro-Jamaican women, to understand the role of the cosmetologist in the cultivation of empowerment among Jamaican women, and to determine the demand for an alternative TVET curriculum for the care and enhancement of Negroid features. I'm using the term Negroid not to offend anybody, but just to understand that that is a term we use in cosmetology, and it is still a classification of race. I just have to declare that. Overarching research questions: what historical factors influence the scope of the cosmetology TVET curriculum? What effect do beauty services and cosmetic usage have on the daily experiences of Jamaican women? And how is the connection between the cosmetologist and her female clientele described? Also, how applicable is the cosmetology TVET curriculum to the care and enhancement of Negroid features? The literature review at this point is quite wide in terms of the scope. Cosmetology, in and of itself, there's not a lot of research done in that area, and especially in the Caribbean. But because of all the influencing factors, my approach is to go wide and start the process of creating key cosmetology information. So as I explained before, because of the influence of aesthetics, we're going to be looking at philosophy, colonial experiences, which also influence the issues that we're having now, culture and society, implications of modern beauty, focusing specifically on health issues, curriculum development, and yes, Black feminism will find its way there, and also cosmetology. Some of the articles that I've looked at so far: Aristotle, and I want you to look at this. The chief forms of beauty are order and symmetry and definiteness, which the mathematical sciences demonstrate in a special degree. When we look at Pythagoras, his theorem, in terms of using triangles, it's the same thing I teach when I'm teaching my students too. There's something we teach called corrective makeup. And I cringe whenever I'm about to deliver that because, as I was explaining before, you're teaching all the students to get all face shapes to look like an ideal face shape, which is oval. So if you are sitting in this room and you do not have an oval face, then we would need to correct it. We need to get your lips to look thin. We need to get your nose to look thin. And we use these mathematical measurements to create that image. So the influence of Aristotle's work is still Aristotle and Plato and all of them. You see where it boils down to being cosmetology as we know it now. We look at also knowledge, the pedagogy of the oppressed, education for empowerment. So these readings will influence how much we can revise what we have as cosmetology and make it more applicable to the needs of society as we have it now. Colonial Experiences, we look at Buckridge. He focused on how Jamaican women dressed after slavery, after they were free. This whole mindset where the thing is that we're not aiming. I'm always saying we. My ancestors and I. The aim is not necessarily to attack people in terms of how we live now, because there's a reason behind it. You're enslaved and you're now free. Your natural instinct would be to try to look like those who are free, because there was no more culture. You left all of that back in Africa. You have no idea of who you are. But there is a possibility now that we are able to build some more of that and get back some of those memories and celebrate that image. Morrow, Willie, how much time do I have? I need to know how much I can say. 10 minutes. Okay, Willie Morrow has a documentary, 400 Years Without a Comb. I'll say this quickly. When I watched that documentary about 11 years ago, he explained to us the journey from Africa to the Caribbean, and the comb was a status symbol in Africa. So now we drive cars and we have houses, and that determines who we are. In Africa, it was your comb, whether your comb was made of gold or it had jewels on it. And through the transatlantic journey, we lost that comb, and because of that, we as Black people, we lost our confidence and our sense of self. And when I looked at that and the journey they went through and in trying to change their features and using the relaxers, and at that time I had relaxed hair, and it bothered me. And one morning I got up and I just cut everything off. I just cut off all my hair and went to sleep. Can you imagine the shock when I got up? Clearly, there was a greater plan that I was seeing at that time, because now I'm able to have all of this, and at that time I didn't. So it was really, the process started at that time. I didn't know it would get to this point, but the more you're exposed to this information, the more it awakens you to see that what we are doing on a day-to-day basis may not necessarily be the thing to do. Tafari Amma, she went hard on this topic. She's looking at it from a cultural perspective, and she refers to our beauty services as chemical self-transformation, a form of social psychosis, an expression of mental enslavement. So when we look at the relaxers and all of that, she thinks we're crazy. And in some regard, I can agree with her. However, she recommended institutions of socialization for the recovery of African identity. So it's something for us to fix. It's something for us to address with urgency. And again, we had mentioned the implications of modern beauty, having endocrine disrupting chemicals in hair products. Women, and especially here, they're saying independent of socioeconomic status. Usually we think that, depending on how educated I am and how much money I have, we all go to the same salons and we all use the same products. There is no distinction. There is no exemption based on class. So these issues are affecting us across all levels. A theoretical framework at this point, remember this is evolving. So I'm sure even my topic has changed since the time I submitted until now. So it's an evolving process. Right now we're looking at the Darwinian theory of beauty, intersectionality, and social comparison theory. Darwinian theory, he explains to us in this pretty much how our expression can be a form of survival or the need for reproduction, because as women, those are important aspects of our life. Mating sounds so. Yes, relationships, how we present ourselves determines pretty much how we survive, whether we get a job, whether we get married. So it's pretty much how we want to be seen. Intersectionality, we're looking at this culmination of race and gender and education and beauty and how it really affects us as women, and social comparison theory, how we view ourselves through the comparison with others. Are we comparing ourselves within the right circle, or are we trying to mimic the impression of the appearance of others? This would be a qualitative study, and it is also looking at the experiences that humans have, and in this regard, Afro-Jamaican women. And there are several methods of data collection. We're doing document review. We want to look at the textbooks. We want to look at the curriculum. We also want to have focus groups, interviews, and observations. I'll be looking at schools in Kingston and in rural areas for the students and for the clients, salons in Kingston and in rural areas, because there is a possibility that the experience of those in Kingston may be different from the experience of those in rural areas. And I'm really planning to go east and west. I'm getting there, sir. Analysis, thematic coding, the typical qualitative analysis. Limitations of the study. It can become a little bit technical when you ask women to expose these feelings. So there may be some bias, and especially in the cosmetology industry, so in interacting with the stylists or even the clients, we tend to have this facade in terms of how we feel about ourselves. So I'm really looking into the best approach to ensure that I get honest and frank responses. The data collection process is seemingly tedious. I am hoping that by the next TVET conference, I should be able to have some even preliminary findings to present. The limitations of the study. First, I had Jamaican women, and then the battle went on, who is a Jamaican woman and how does a Jamaican woman look? So then we changed it to Afro-Jamaican women, because there are specific features that we want to address. The ethical considerations as expected, and references. So I'm finished. If there are any questions or comments. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Deidre McLeod from FHI 360. My question was, I know is it, or perhaps it's a clarification I'm seeking. Is this research aiming at sort of doing a expose or just exploring how cosmetology shapes or aesthetics in a cultural way, or is it part of the objective is aimed at assessing how this is presented in institutional ways through the curriculum, with the aim to help to correct or broaden or expand the way in which cosmetology is presented? Like, what exactly is it functionally to improve or institutionalize curriculum on cosmetology, or is it sort of to do an expose, to explore what exists and what the implications of those are?
Thank you for your question. I'd have to say both. That's a personal aim, is to actually have an alternative curriculum. However, if there is no demand or clear need for that curriculum, because you have persons making money from these services, you have their livelihood based on it. So it's something that I think will have its space, because as it is now, there is no natural hair practitioner who can be certified because there are no standards existing. So there is that space. So it would more so be the creation of an alternative curriculum to satisfy that need. And I'm also saying yes to explore, because many of us are still not yet aware of what is happening and what is being taught and how it is being received. Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, Ferdinand James from the School of Education, St. Augustine campus, Trinidad. I saw where you, in your questions, you wanted to assess and you measure the effects I just, if you could go back to that slide.
Where is that
I saw
problem?
something about the effect of use.
The questions?
Yeah, these are the questions. What affects the beauty services? Yes, yes. The measure, how are you going to measure those effects? Because it can't be only qualitative. You'd have to get, is it design an instrument, something. So if you're doing a qualitative, I would say you may want to tweak that to stakeholders reported effects or something like that, so you could get away with the qualitative aspect. But once you talk effects, you have to have a control group and you have to have a quasi-experimental or experimental kind of design
Thank
to
you.
get the effects, because you want to be sure that that's actually the thing that's effective.
It's so I'll review it because
But you can have stakeholders reported effects, so if that's what the stakeholders reported
Okay.
in terms of quality.
Do you have that, sir?
Okay, we're just going to do the last.
Do you have that? Did you write that? Okay. Yes, miss.
Just one comment, one question. Very interesting study. I honestly didn't think that beauty had on his Darwinian and Aristotelian philosophy and history. So I am learning something. However, same question too. You have what do beauty services and cosmetic usage? But I find beauty services and cosmetic uses is very broad. That gives me the universe of what is there. So I think because the question is so broad, it would be difficult to answer. So I think you have to narrow it down to specific aspects, maybe African beauty, Afro, whatever, or something. Cosmetic uses again is very broad. You're talking about nails, you're talking about face, you're talking about skin. You have to do something in the question.
Well,
you have it in the review.
yes.
Kind of chisel it down to a little more specific.
Well, I'm not sure if you were here earlier, but so I can review the question. However, I spoke in terms of focusing on makeup artistry and hair. So
I'm not saying no, but I still think you have to make that clear in the question itself, because when you give your responses, there should be no kind of wondering, even though you may have that laid out at the beginning.
Okay.
That's just a
Yes, thank you.
respectful suggestion.
No, thank you. I remember this is a proposal, so I'm here for the feedback in this space. So I'm open to the suggestions. Okay. Yes, thank you.